Ethiopian federalism implementation.
Look, the federal system, the multinational federal system, did provide cultural space. It did work in that respect, and it showed that all of those liberation organizations that I just mentioned, none of them now says, I want to secede from Ethiopia. That people say that multinational federation is going to lead to the dissolution of Ethiopia is actually not borne out by the facts. What we know is that the cultural space has actually made the demand for secessionism diminish. So it's worked. What we need to do is the political system. The political system did not allow for the devolution of power to the states. What was ruling this country, and I still think it rules this country, is the party structure. And the party is centralized. In fact, it openly espouses the philosophy of democratic centralism. The problem here with the federation is that the federation is politically nominal. It was not implemented. It was not democratic because it was still centralized. Even the EPRDF as a leading party is not democratic. 5% of the population has the same votes in the executive committee as the 50% of the population. So to answer your question more directly, what we miss here is not the federal structure. We have it. It's not that it didn't work. As I just said, it worked in the cultural realm. What is missing is the democratization of the federation itself, which means power that belongs constitutionally to the regions should devolve to the regions. Economic decision-making that belongs to the regions should devolve to the regions. The center must be assigned only what it is constitutionally assigned of doing, especially in foreign policy and the protection of the entire country through defense. If power is arranged according to the Constitution, if power devolves to the regions according to the Constitution itself, I do not think that it is going to be a problem. I think that's going to resolve the problem of the country in large measure today. That doesn't mean it's going to create a paradise for all of us today. We'll still have some other problems to deal with, but politically speaking and conflict reduction, in terms of economic conflicts, resource conflict, I think a workable federation, allowing the federation to be democratized, is the answer.
And what is the fairness of sharing power and responsibility between the regional states and federal government?
It has not been implemented in Ethiopia. The Constitution provides the basis for federal arrangement and for the sharing of power between the center and or the federal government and the regions. That has not happened. That should happen. And the Constitution has its own mechanism of improving the Constitution. This Constitution of Ethiopia, as far as I am concerned, is the most liberal Constitution that protects the democratic rights, on paper that is, the democratic rights, human rights, and all kinds of other rights for Ethiopia. If it is implemented, I think Ethiopia would be one of the most liberal states in the world. As far as the Constitution is concerned, I think it's a sufficient and even more than sufficient Constitution for Ethiopia. So I don't think there is a problem with the Constitution. If there is, the Constitution provides an amendment process.
But there are groups who deny this, and the Constitution doesn't represent us at all.
It's a lie. What they're saying is that we were not represented. We were not represented in 1991. Two responses. Who was represented? Who elected anybody? It is the political forces that toppled the Derg regime. They got together and wanted to write a constitution. And as far as I remember, they have tried to make sure that everyone was represented. If the question is, our people did not elect their representative to a constituent assembly, who did? That's number one. Nobody was formally represented through an electoral process, unless they are demanding some special rights for themselves.
But was it possible to do so?
Well, what I'm saying is simply to respond to their concerns. Nobody was formally represented. So one group cannot simply say, I was not represented. No one was formally represented. But to an extent that is possible, everyone was represented. There were representations from universities, from religious institutions, from trade institutions. Everything that was possible at that point was done to make sure that everyone was represented. But that's not the important issue. The important issue is the Constitution. Whoever wrote it, does the Constitution protect the rights of everyone in Ethiopia on paper? Like I was just saying, this is a constitution that is more than necessary for Ethiopia at this point in time. So, yes, you were represented if representation is what was needed at that time, but that's not even the issue. The issue is the constitution good enough for Ethiopia? And as far as I'm concerned, it's the best constitution we can hope for right now. And we have lived under it for 25 years. And we as a country, as a people, as Ethiopians, we cannot live under the regime of changing constitutions. Every time there is a possibility for change, we don't change the Constitution. There is a process of changing the Constitution there. The Constitution is what constitutes the country right now. You cannot dismantle the Constitution and hope the country stays together. So it is not a good idea to trifle with the Constitution.
Too controversial thing.
Absolutely. So the Constitution is the best that you can hope for at this point in time. You want to change some parts of it? There is an amendment process. They have done that in 2004 on the census issues. The Constitution was amended in 2004. So that process is in place. So those people that are saying we were not represented, who are you to be represented in the first place? So that's not true. It's a lie. It's a lie for that point in time. So this is not a goodwill effort. This is not a goodwill question about keeping this country together, stabilizing it, and look into the future to improve lives for Ethiopian citizens.
And let's talk about the power of regional states in Ethiopia. There are 9 regional states in Ethiopia, including the 2 city administrations. Can we say that they are autonomous enough?
They are sovereign. According to the Ethiopian constitution, the preamble says, we the people, we the nations, nationalities and peoples of Ethiopia came together willingly, and I don't quite remember what it is, but to form a political community, willingly. And you go to Article 9, it says the nations and nationalities of Ethiopia are sovereign. They're sovereign states. As a matter of fact, it is these 9 sovereign states that came together in a coming together federalism and created the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia. It's not a matter of autonomy. These are actually sovereign regional states. It's more than autonomy. When you speak of autonomy, you're talking about an autonomy from the center, from the federal government, right? That's not actually what they have. They are actually sovereign states that actually created the central government.
Is it power and responsibility is fairly shared between the federal and the regional states?
What power the regions exercise and what powers the federal government exercises, these are delineated by law, by the Constitution. They're clear. Is it fair? I think it's fair as a response to a long-standing question. I personally think that it is fair that the regions are exercising sovereign power, that is internal sovereignty in determining how to collect taxes, how to educate their kids, how to enrich their cultures, how to ensure representation. They are sovereign to do that internally. If we are talking in principle, based on the existing constitution, yes, the regions they have more power than the center, and as it should be. The political problem in this country was the over-centralization and concentration of power at the center. One of the problems in this country was the fact that the center never shared power with the regions or with the periphery. Now the Constitution actually provides for the sharing of power, and that is delineated by the Constitution. So having the regions exercise more sovereign power than the central is actually what I think should happen. That is correct, because centralization is what we wanted to correct. And how best can you correct centralization of power than the decentralization of power? So yes, some of the powers of the central government were taken, especially in terms of internal sovereignty, were taken and devolved to the regions, and that's a good thing. I do not want a very powerful center. They have a mission. This is like a commonwealth, that the center or the federal government actually is a commonwealth of the nations and the nationalities. They protect the country from external aggression. They have a foreign policy that is in the interest of the regions. They conduct foreign policy in the interest of the regions, for the nations, the nationalities, the peoples of Ethiopia. That's their area. And to some extent, they protect the Constitution. There are federal systems of law or courts. Then there is a police force that is actually enforcing federal laws. So that is legally delineated, and that's a good thing that the center is not as strong as it used to be.
Finally, what do you think is cause for conflicts, especially ethnic-based conflicts in Ethiopia?
That should be really easy. Number one, follow the Constitution and implement it strictly. What that simply means is that the government, the regime in power, they do not have the power to be above the law and prevent people from exercising the full rights that the Constitution inheres on groups or on individuals. The government must be committed to fully implementing the Constitution of Ethiopia. That would go a long way to reduce conflict and to reduce the possibilities of conflict over power. Because when people's rights are protected, that actually makes out for peace. That is the concept behind the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that it was a mechanism to avoid a third world war, that democracies fight less. People whose rights are protected fight less. So that helps to a great extent. The people should also be informed citizens. People should understand their own rights and their own responsibilities, because with rights come responsibilities. So that is a process. But for now, what is at hand for our country is that we are in a moment of transition. We are in a process of transition. Democratic transition, that is, that a transition from an authoritarian government or rule to a democracy. This is a very difficult moment because it's a fluid moment, because we are in a transition. The old isn't dead, the new hasn't arrived, so we are between and betwixt. These are very difficult times because people do not know what rights they are going to exercise after a democratic system is established. They are, as I was saying earlier, they're jockeying for power. So the transition must be managed. To manage a transition simply means is to implement the Constitution fully, to be committed to protecting the rights of individuals fully. And it's not always, when you say the authority of the law or respecting the rule of law. What that simply means, it doesn't mean that the government is the one that is ensuring the rule of law. The government itself should be under the law. If we do that, we will make sure that we are transitioning. So managing that transition is extremely important. And managing transitions means managing expectations, managing the laws that should be changed, managing institutions, managing attitudes, all of that. but it's also managing the economic sector, because people who had been fighting for this change, if they do not see any benefits accruing to them from the change that is coming, they would probably choose their security over liberty. That is what that simply means, is that the liberty that we have, if it's not managed, it might lead to chaos, and under chaos, people would gravitate towards protecting their own security. And that might lead to a semi-authoritarian system, and that's the least thing, the thing that we need as a country.
If you have anything to add.
I think the last point that I just raised about ensuring this transition. Let's agree in this country that we are in transition, and nobody knows everything. Okay, in a transition moment, even though we know there is a literature on transitology, and we have the experiences of 120 people, 120 countries that have gone through this process, there are uncertainties. There are things that we don't know. So what we need in this country is a national conversations, dialogue between parties, discussions between people, clarifying where we're going. Simply continuing business as usual is not going to do, because, as I said, we are not in a moment of uncertainty. What is important here is to make sure that uncertainty does not reign. Uncertainty does not rule the day. Uncertainty should not become the principle that guides our activities. We have to reduce uncertainty by all means and altogether.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Dear viewers, this is all about our discussion with Professor Iskel Gabisa on Ethiopian federalism. Till next time, goodbye.
Galiin namoota dhuunfaa fi meeshaaleen gabaarraa bitaman kan waliin madaalle yoo ta'e jireenya irratti dhiibbaa uuma. Itoophiyaa keessatti daldaltoonni sababa amansiisaa hin taaneen gatii meeshaalee dabalanii uummata duraanuu nyaataan of hin danda'in ittuu jireenya isaa hammeessuun baramaa dhufeera. Mootummaan gatii gabaa seeraan ala saffisaan dabalaa deemu tasgabbeessuuf waldaalee bu'uuraa hundeessee meeshaalee bu'uuraa kanneen akka zayita nyaataa, sukkaaraa fi daakuu furnoo gatii madaalawaadhaan akka raabsan godheera. Malli kun gatii meeshaalee seeraan ala dabalaa deemu kana hamma tokko tasgabbeessuus akka yaadametti garuu to'achuu hin dandeenye. Yeroo ammaas meeshaaleen garaagaraa sababa hin beekamneen gatiin isaanii hamma yaadame ol dabalaa jira. Kun ammoo namoota harka qalleeyyitti jireenyi garmalee akka ulfaatu gochaa jira. Jiraattonni godina Shawaa Kaabaa magaalaa Dabrasiggees sababa daballii gatii meeshaaleetiin rakkoo ammaataaf saaxilamaa jirra jedhu.
Haala qabatamaa amma keessa jirruun qaala'insi jireenyaa magaala keenya keessatti baay'ee hammaachati jira. Yoo laallu oomisha warshaas haa ta'u, oomisha qotee bulaas haa ta'u, gatiin hanga parsantaa 50tti kan dabale jira. Kun immoo sababbiin ittiin daballe ammatti ifaa miti akka jiraata tokkotti ani yoo laalu jechuudha. Fakkeenyaa oomishuma qotee bulaa yoo kan fudhannu ta'e dinnichi tokko kan kiiloo birrii 8-10 bitamaa ture har'atti kiiloogiraamni tokkichi birrii 20 irra jira. Oomisha qotee bulaa keessa jechuudha. Karaa biraatiin oomisha warshaatis suuqii irratti yoo kan fudhannu ta'e kibriittiin birrii tokkoon bitamaa ture birrii 2 gurguramaatii jira. Sababni dabaliinsa gatii kanaa ammatti wanti ifa ta'e hin jiru, garuu rakkoo ammaataa keessa jira.
Keessattuu amma midhaan irratti yoo fudhattan dur xaafii yeroo oomishaatti jechaadha. Qarshii 1,800 hanga 2,200 ol darbeen beeku. Bara